I am your host, Slim bin Muhammad Rafi, and here is your YouTube channel, Samir Universal. What is the solution of Gaza? And is Donald Trump, who wants to make it a sea resort for himself, a property dealer, and he has lit the whole world morality on fire, the human rights on fire, sensitivity towards other people who have lost their loved ones, and 100,000 people, even the babies snatched from the incubators, oxygen stopped, suffocated, and died. Every hospital, out of 36 hospitals, 33 all leveled, all mosques, all churches, all water supply, all power, all food, everything stopped. Every house, every habitat, every road, every infrastructure, sewerage, wells poisoned. Is it all right? If you all agree with me that they are all crimes, and these crimes were committed by nearly about a dozen people, and I'll try and name them for you. And I think these are the people who, if the word fails to punish them, and they should be hanged, because look at how fall and how low we have fallen since the execution of Nazis. And I'm going to show you what the people were and how strong they were, what morality they had, and they put the Nazis and they hanged them publicly. And look at this is how I think the Netanyahu, the main, beast, a pig, an animal, a baby killer, and he's been planning that for the last 25, 30 years. Following the footsteps of Shamir, he told his wife, I will carry his legacy and I will put these settlements, I'll make the two-state solution impossible. So he funded and created Hamas so that the Palestinian Authority could not have a state, not have a power, and he killed the Oslo Agreement. So why don't you first execute him? And I think if the world really wants to be just and come back to the respect international law, and then must support who have tried to sanction, they have no right, and now that bloody man should also be impeached and hanged with him, along with the Blinken and on with the Jalebi Joe and all his cabinet who actually supplied the 500,000 pumps. You listen to the public and then you will see, unless you get rid of these epics, the friends of Israel, and get rid of, repeal all the laws about what the hell nonsense, anti-Semitism. You have every right to criticize in a democratic world. How do you preach to the other world that you care for human rights and you put sanctions when you are the dirtiest, the filthiest in it? And as it proved to show you how peaceful Gaza was, how the Jews and Christians and Muslims lived together, you got to see to believe it. Now, without saying much about it, in the end I will tell you the solution. The way this peace should be settled, and it should be cleansed. The whole, I think, the land of the prophets, the old and the geography of thousands of years of Palestine must be cleansed from these scum of the societies, these womanizers, these drunkards, these Zionists, this apartheid, the filthiest, the dirtiest in everything, the adulterers, the homosexuals. Everything is in these Jews which you got. No wonder they've been thrown out of 48 countries. There's not a single person who have ever tolerated them. It's not only the Hitler who put them in the incinerator and gas chambers. I think every country, all 48 countries of the world could not be wrong. So if you find their graves dug in the United States, in Britain, in every part of the Europe, you can see for yourself. And see what I think the Saudis are saying about him. And I agree with them that they should be thrown out of it. When they have dual nationality, they should go there. And almost 90% of these came as settlers, as refugees, seeking refuge, and forced and took away the land of Palestine. They have no right to be there. They are the one who should be expelled. They are the one who should get it out, or not the Gaza people who have given the blood of their children, their women, their elderly, their sick.
The Israelis are demolishing buildings in Jenin with people still inside them, and the President of the United States openly contemplating the forcible transfer of the Palestinians. First of all, are Arabs, and particularly Palestinians, entitled to the same protections under international law as everybody else? And secondly, do we still affirm our support for UN Security Council Resolution 3236, which guarantees the Palestinians safety, security and sovereignty in their own land? And if that's the case, when is she going to just stop just talking about it and actually take steps and action to enforce these matters in law?
Dark son of a sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually.
If you take out Saddam, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Netanyahu had, from 1995 onward, the theory toppling the governments of Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony.
When I was born, there was no Israel. So where did this come from? Well, what I discovered was that there was a movement that began over a century ago and began operating in Europe and in the United States. It was and is a political movement that has profoundly and negatively impacted our country. It has tragically impacted the Middle East, and it has dangerously impacted the entire world. And yet most of us, I think, have never heard of it and could certainly not define it. It's political Zionism. This was a movement to create a Jewish state in Palestine, to create a Jewish state on land that was already inhabited, in which 95% were not Jewish.
नाज़रीन, बहुत बड़ी खबर ये सामने आ रही है कि नेटो ग्रीनलैंड के अंदर अमेरिका के खिलाफ ट्रूप्स भेजने जा रहा है। दुनिया इतनी तेजी के साथ बदल रही है कि वो वाकया जो कोई सोच भी नहीं सकता था वो हो रहे हैं। नेटो अमेरिका के खिलाफ ग्रीनलैंड के अंदर ट्रूप्स भेजने जा रहा है, फौजें भेजने जा रहा है नेटो अमेरिका के खिलाफ ग्रीनलैंड को बचाने के लिए। मामलात इस हद तक जो है वो चले गए हैं, और दूसरी तरफ जो इसराइल है उसके खिलाफ जो शिकंजा है वो और तंग हो रहा है, और जो ट्रंप ने जो प्लान्स दिए और जो सारा मामला हुआ वो और ज्यादा उसने डैमेज किया है इसराइल को, और ज्यादा नुकसान जो है वो इसराइल को पहुंचा है। और इसके साथ साथ नाज़रीन अगले 3-4 दिन बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है। एक तो अरब फॉरेन मिनिस्टर्स वाशिंगटन में पहुंच रहे हैं और सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट ऑफ अमेरिका वो पहला दौरा जो है वो मिडिल ईस्ट का करने जा रहे हैं। अब इसी दरमियान मिस्र ने एक पैगाम जो है वो पेंटागन को भिजवा दिया है। जो जंग की तैयारियां हो रही हैं मिस्र में, एक पैगाम पेंटागन को भिजवाया गया है। और दूसरी तरफ नाज़रीन जो टेक्नोलॉजी की दौड़ है, जो तिजारती दौड़ है, उसमें चीन लीड कर रहा है अमेरिका को। नई रिपोर्ट्स आपके सामने रखेंगे कैसे ये अमेरिकी एम्पायर जो है वो डिक्लाइन में आगे से आगे बढ़ता चला जा रहा है, और चीन जो है, ब्रिक्स जो है, ईस्ट जो है वो यहां पर राइज कर रहा है। इवन अगर आप देखें तो 4 से 5 जो इस्लामी जो ताकतें हैं, 4 से 5 ममालिक हैं, वो इस वक्त तेजी के साथ जो है वो राइज कर रहे हैं, और उसका शदीद जो है वो खौफ भी इसराइल में पाया जा रहा है, जिसमें टर्की, सऊदी अरेबिया, ईरान, पाकिस्तान और इंडोनेशिया, ये 5 ऐसी ताकतें हैं जो एक बड़ी अस्करी पावर बन रही हैं। खुद जो तुर्की है वो 5th जनरेशन जो फाइटर जेट्स है वो बना रहा है। ईरान किस तरह से तरक्की स्पेस के अंदर और नेवी में, और आगे पीछे आप देख रहे हैं किस तरह से वो तरक्की। और पाकिस्तान तो फिर एक न्यूक्लियर पावर है, और उसके भी चीन के साथ भी बहुत सारी चीजें चल रही हैं, जंगी तैयारी। इंडोनेशिया बहुत तेजी के साथ तरक्की कर रहा है। सऊदी अरेबिया तो डेफिनेटली ऑलरेडी एक बड़ी पावर है, लेकिन अस्करी तौर पर सऊदी अरेबिया भी अब असलहा खरीद रहा है। इवन वो टर्की से जंगी तारे, मतलब वो भी एक बड़ी अस्करी पावर बन रहा है। तो ये 5 बड़ी जो ताकतें हैं इस्लामी दुनिया की, इनका राइज भी साथ साथ हो रहा है, जिसमें इजराइल जो है वो बहुत ज्यादा परेशान है। तो ये तमाम तफसीलात आपके सामने रखते हैं। नाज़रीन, हम एक ऐसे टाइम से गुजर रहे हैं जहां एक तरफ वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर तब्दील हो रहा है, और दूसरी तरफ फलस्तीन और इजराइल का जो मामला है वो डिसाइडिंग मोड के ऊपर आया हुआ है। इसीलिए आप देख रहे हैं कि दुनिया में इतना भूचाल है, इतना हंगामा खेज सूरत हाल है और इतनी अनप्रेडिक्टेबल सूरत हाल है। यानी इससे पहले क्या होता था, यानी जो अरब्स और इजराइल की जंगें हुई या इजराइल फलस्तीन के तनाज़े में जो भी जंगें हुई हैं, चाहे लेबनान से भी जंग हुई, हिजबुल्लाह से, तो वो कभी कोई डिसाइडिंग जंग नहीं थी और उन जंगों के साथ कभी वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर नहीं जुड़ा हुआ था कि हिजबुल्लाह और इजराइल की जंग हो रही है, साथ वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बदल रहा है, अरब्स इजराइल की जंग हो रही है, साथ वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बदल रहा है। नहीं, ऐसा कभी भी नहीं हुआ। यहां पर एक तो इस जंग का नतीजा जो है वो फैसला कुन होगा, यानी ग्रेटर इजराइल या मुकम्मल फलस्तीन। दूसरा जो वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर है वो यहां पर बदल रहा है, अमेरिकी एम्पायर का डिक्लाइन हो रहा है, वेस्टर्न एम्पायर का, वेस्टर्न हेजेमनी का जो है वो डिक्लाइन हो रहा है। तो अब जो भी वाकयात मिडिल ईस्ट में हो रहे हैं और जो भी ग्लोबल में हो रहे हैं, वो दोनों एक दूसरे के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। यानी वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर फलस्तीन इजराइल के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है और इजराइल फलस्तीन का नतीजा वो वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है।
In this country, there's a lot of people who still wonder what role, if any, Saudi Arabia had in 9/11. Now, there's a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia, peace with Saudi Arabia, and then you read in the papers, well, Saudi Arabia says yes, but they have a caveat. There needs to be a Palestinian state. Since when did the Palestinians become so important to the Saudi Arabians?
Well, we got the Abraham Accords because we went around the Palestinians. Because the Palestinians, whether they're Hamas or their competitors, the Palestinian Authority, they both want to see the end of Israel. The only difference is Hamas says, let's use it immediately by terror and military means. And the other guys say, no, let's do it by lawfare, by the ICC. Let's put pressure on Israel to withdraw to these indefensible lines where we're, 9 miles wide. President Trump says Israel's too small. He cuts to the chase, gets right to the point. And he was just right. Well, we can't be any smaller. I mean, we're not going to have an organization that is committed to our destruction 9 miles from the sea. All they have to do is cut us in half and we're dead. So, yeah, that's something that may have been debated in Israel. But after October 7th, after the massacre, that's gone. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to say, oh, just give them a Palestinian state. They just had one. It's called Gaza under Hamas. That was an effective Palestinian state. What happened with that, you see, was used as a springboard in an attempt to destroy us. When we complete the changeover of the Middle East, when we cut the Iranian axis down to even further than we've already cut it, when we make sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, when we destroy Hamas, that will set the stage for an additional agreement with the Saudis and with others. By the way, I believe also in the Muslim world, because it's peace through strength. When we are very strong and we stand together, objections that are raised now as insurmountable sort of change. And that happened in the first term. If you look at what some of our Arab partners were saying or the conditions they had for the Abraham Accords, it's never going to happen. Now, it did happen because we had such a strong partnership. And I'll tell you, I don't want to get into all these verbal exchanges. They're not important. If we're strong, if we're victorious, peace will come, more peace will come, and it will sweep the day. I have no doubt about that.
Mr. Prime Minister, Donald Trump has come up with this plan for Gaza, which is quite revolutionary. About people having the opportunity to move, about cleaning up the territory, about encouraging, or more than encouraging, Egypt and Jordan to take Gazans and so forth. What do you make of all of it?
I think that President Trump's proposal is the first fresh idea in years, and it has the potential to change everything in Gaza. Otherwise, we can keep coming back to the same thing over and over. Same old, same old, same old. We leave, the Gaza becomes again reoccupied by these terrorists who use it as a base to attack Israel. And he comes forward and he says, let's have a new idea. By the way, I've seen him do this time and again. He cuts to the chase. He asks you these things or says things that people find it jarring initially. And then I said they scratch their heads. They say, you know what? He's got a point here. And then sometimes, and I hope this time too, they say, he's right, because it happened many times. So it's happened this time too. And what is Gaza? Gaza is basically a small area right next to, it's 25 miles from Tel Aviv, which Hamas has used as a springboard for continuous attacks, terrorist attacks against Israel. We come in, we slap them, smack them, and we leave and then we do it again, and we do it. They do it again. We do it again. Doesn't go anywhere. Now we did something else. We're going to finish Hamas off, and what happens then? Do you leave the people there with all that devastation? Do you say, well, they have to stay in, confined? Because nobody lets them leave. Everybody describes Gaza as the biggest open-air prison in the world. You know why? Because they're not allowed to leave. And therefore, they're just getting more and more densely populated, more miserable, overtaken time and time again by these terrorists. And in comes President Trump and he says, hey, open the gate. Let them leave. And I'll find a place of destination for temporary relocation. How are you going to clean up this devastation site? Devastation caused by the fact that Hamas was fighting from densely populated areas and forced us to take action. They're also devastated by their booby traps that they put there in every house. They detonate. A lot of this is self-inflicted. So, get the population out, allow them to leave, not forcible eviction, not ethnic cleansing, getting people out of what all these countries and all these do-gooders say is an open-air prison. Why are you keeping them in prison? All that President Trump is saying, I want to open the gate and give them an option to relocate temporarily while we rebuild the place physically and while we also rebuild it in terms of de-radicalization. You want to come back? You have to disavow terrorism, but you can't come back. Get get the Arab countries, the Gulf countries, and others to finance the reconstruction. They always say that they care about Gaza. Okay, here's a chance to prove it. I think this is a novel approach and the correct approach. It's got details that have to be sorted out, but two things that President Trump has been blamed for are totally false. He never said he wants American troops to do the job. Guess what? We'll do the job, Hamas attacked us, we'll take care of them. We'll finish them all. And the second thing, he didn't say that American taxpayers' money is going to do the job. He said he'd get independent financing for it, and I'm sure he will. So I think this is a very, very good new approach. And rather than discounting it or, guffawing about it or deriding it, I think we should pursue it because I think it's the right approach. Of course, you have to get the destination. You have to get the destination so they can relocate somewhere. I think that's the real issue that is involved here. Volunteering. Once you give them the option, they'll leave. You know how I know that? Because I got requests from Gaza before the war for people who wanted to leave, but they were locked because their neighbors, Egypt, wouldn't open the door. That's the truth. And you know something? Some of them would bribe the gatekeepers, not ours, but the gatekeepers in Egypt, they would bribe them. So the very rich got out. But those who wanted to leave couldn't leave. Give them an option. Give them an option. And I think
was sentenced to death by hanging. Their execution was held publicly on the following day and became a theater of horror. The 14 Nazi criminals were hanged in front of over 100,000 civilian spectators, who came to witness the execution which took place in the horse racing venue of Minsk, today's Victory Square. Soviet officials brought the 14 men to the gallows on 14 trucks and tied the nooses on as thousands of men, women and children watched. On the platform of each of the 14 trucks stood one convict. While some of the Nazi criminals who were to be hanged stood proudly, the others wet their trousers. When the trucks moved forward, the condemned Nazis were left to hang, swaying in the air. When Richard was executed on the 30th of January 1946, he was 55 years old. There were no tears shed for Johann Georg Richard.
And whether it was so interested in a Palestinian state. And he said
eyes, and they have no shame. And I think that the countries they came from, and that will be the easiest way, because most of them have dual citizenship of their passport. 16 lakh came from Russia, so that is 1.6 million. So let the Russians either revoke their Russian citizenship or let them settle there and compensate them, so that at least 1.6 million Jews leave Tel Aviv, live Eilat, live all that northern area along Lebanon, and it's already ghost towns and vacant, and they should be, all Gaza people should go and occupy those homes and lands, cultivate that, so it will be a buffer zone of at least 100 miles inside the present occupied territory, so that there is a peace between Lebanon and the present Israel. And once the Gaza is reconstructed by the Arabs and by, I think, Egypt, part of Egypt along the Rafah border, just maybe 10 kilometers, and the remaining south of the Gaza Strip along with Rafah, that's where must be occupied by them. And in the area which is empty in Egypt, they can have put temporary houses. The Chinese can do it, Saudis can do it, and as soon as it's reconstructed, they should be accommodated in the whole of Eilat, so that the West Bank and the Gaza, they are joined together, and then they can vacate the northern border of Lebanon, and then the Israelis, and especially those Israelis who practice Torah and they don't believe in fighting and taking other people's lives and mock at them, and they can get back to their planet and live in peace. This is my suggestion, that the Germans should take, the Polish should take Polish. So this dirtiest, filthiest Netanyahu will go back to Poland. Many, they will go back to Russia, to America, to England, to Canada, and from wherever places they came from, and there'll be hardly 1 million left in there, and the majority will be the Palestinians. So the government, just like on the same basis as it is in Lebanon, they can rotate. If the president is a Jew, then the prime minister can be Muslim, and vice versa, and so can be the Christian accommodated there, and all three of them can rule this sacred place, and there will be no fight between Christians, Muslims, and the Jews. They live as they lived before, happily together. It was the generosity of Muslims, and I am sure it can come back.
Their execution was held publicly on the following day and became a theater of horror. The 14 Nazi criminals were hanged in front of over 100,000 civilian spectators who came to witness the execution, which took place in the horse racing venue of Minsk, today's Victory Square. Soviet officials brought the 14 men to the gallows on 14 trucks and tied the nooses on as thousands of men, women and children watched. On the platform of each of the 14 trucks stood one convict. While some of the Nazi criminals who were to be hanged stood proudly, the others wet their trousers. When the trucks moved forward, the condemned Nazis were left to hang, swaying in the air. When Richard was executed on the 30th of January 1946, he was 55 years old. There were no tears shed for Johann Georg Richard.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर